Okay.
So welcome all. It's a wonderful Juneteenth. I hope it's okay that we're meeting on this holiday, a fabulous holiday. Um, and we'd like to all welcome you to StoryBrand, Lisa and I, Lisa Yerk, who's in Cookeville, Tennessee. I'm in Sebastopol, California, a bit of a contrast. Um, and our special guest is Cal Crosby, who is on with us now. Welcome, Cal.
Thank you. It's an honor
Yeah,
to be here, to be honest.
We are in
um,
for such a treat. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Boy, we've got an author and a publisher now on. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Chris. Hi, everyone. Hi,
Hi.
Brad.
Hi. Hi, Cal.
Hey, Brad. Long time no see.
I
Vicky.
know. Good to see you.
Hey, Calvin.
This is becoming like a teenage chat line.
I'm expecting a full house because Cal, you know everybody in this industry. You know so many people. How long have you been working in some aspect of bookselling? Or
uh,
do you even own to that to
October,
those
31 years.
31
I
years?
think October 8th was the first day I started at Book Passage. So,
Wow.
Wow.
So so you've
Let's give
had
it.
time.
yeah, it was nice that they hired a 15-year-old. So,
Hey, Cal. So, even though sometimes telling a story is best to start in the middle and then go back, let's start at the beginning, the boring beginning. Tell us all the things. Well, you presently own a bookstore, which you should talk about, King's English, but also tell us a bit about your career and the different things you've done.
I'll start at the beginning with actually the King's English. As a kid, I fell in love with what was Sam Weller's, is now Weller's Bookworks, and Ken Sanders. And then I didn't know the difference between chain stores or independent bookstores, but I knew those stores were special. And then one day I heard about the King's English. So finally I had access to a vehicle and I drove up there. And it's like when you walk through the wardrobe at Narnia, like it's just magic. The little rooms, the cottage, everything is just so inviting. And Salt Lake is still a red line city. And I grew up on the west side, which is more brown and definitely economically challenged. So I was always followed when I went to other retail. I was never engaged with. And at King's English, these wonderful, affluent, well read white women not only recommended books to me, but they wanted my book recommendations. So it was the first time as a young person that I was not marginalized the way I was used to living marginalized in the state of Utah. Then I moved to Denver for art school, fell in love with Tattered Cover, and finally ended up in the Bay Area. And I had a friend that lived in the Bay Area who was always sending me signed copies from author events at a place called Book Passage. The first person I ended up making friends with was the then assistant manager of Book Passage. And I was at Williams Sonoma, and he said, "Hey, we need holiday help. Why don't you come work weekends or something?" So I went to the interview. Nancy Perkins was the store manager at that time, and had the interview, went home, said to my then husband, "I don't know what that lady's job is, but I want to do it." And he said, "Well, shouldn't you get the part-time job first?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but that's the job I want to do." Took the part-time job, quit Williams Sonoma, got a raise for 25 cents more an hour to do that, and had Nancy Perkins' job in a year, and she got to be the buyer. So it was like a good synergy that worked out for both of us. I was there for 5 years. Then I went to Books Inc. just as they were coming out of that bankruptcy, and helped them not only build their merchandising, but help them build the author programming that they still have now. Then Book Passage had a crisis of embezzlement. And I had stayed friends with the Petrocellis, and talking to Elaine, we realized that I needed to leave Books Inc. and go to Book Passage to help them recover from the embezzlement. Then I sometimes have an expiration date, Steve, at 5 to 7 years. Expiration date came, went back to Books Inc., really dug into managing most of their stores, their community relations, more of the events programming, and developing their merchandising plan for the entire collection of stores. Then, with the idea that I would buy into Book Passage, I went back to Book Passage. And when that wasn't going to happen, Dave Eggers called Elaine and said, we're going from for-profit to nonprofit at McSweeney's, and we need someone with this skill set. And he goes down the list. And she said, in good conscience, I have to tell you about this opportunity because you are the right person. You're who he's looking for. So did that, was at McSweeney's for about a year. And it turns out that when you're going through a divorce, you have to have a steady stream of income. So not for profit publishing was taking a toll, even though I learned so much. And I hope I can bridge the gap between bookselling and publishing because there's a massive gap that I still see evidence of. And Landon announced his retirement. And long story short, took over NCIBA, merged them into Kaliba, pandemic. Betsy Burton, who had now not only become like an idol and an icon, and Ann Holman, Betsy called me and said, I need advice on how to sell my shop. I hung up, looked at my partner, and said, hey, if I talk to Betsy again, I only see this ending one way. I can't have just anybody effing up the King's English. He said, okay. And 3 months later, I was doing weekends in Salt Lake and still doing weekdays at Kaliba while we worked on an exit strategy. And I waited for my ownership to kick in on July 1st of that year. So,
Where was that?
2021.
2021. Wow. And as we were musing about earlier, what's different about ownership? I mean, this is something to talk a little about the aspects of ownership and both the fears and the skills needed.
So with ownership, and I'm still very best friends with the Tuckers who had Books Inc. at the time. I'm still very best friends, family even, with the Petrocellis and the Tuckers. But there were times I had so much umbrage, and I was always like, of the people, and someday if I own my own store, I'm going to do this, this, and this. That didn't change until it took about my second year when I was like, oh, no matter what I do, I'm not of the people anymore. I'm the owner, and I'm the man. And I bear the responsibility, which I assume is part of the job, is the ebb and flow of income, watching payroll. Those were just aspects of the job, but now they're crucial aspects of the job. Having lived a life in bookselling and um, nonprofits, I don't I don't have a mansion that I can draw from. I don't have I don't have the resources to draw from. So my responsibility to the bookshop and to my own sustainability are now merged in such a way that that responsibility is more than I ever imagined it to be when I was working for someone else. I still don't like the
Yeah.
space of the man, though. I still feel like I'm of the people.
I, I
We'll
think a
think of
lot
you
of
that.
us, yeah. Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so one of the things Lisa, who's on obviously, and I, who are also on, talk about endlessly with bookstores is the psychology of ownership, I might call it, which is what you're embodying now and talking about. And I'm curious as to how you look at it in terms of looking forward, planning, not panicking, and particularly because we're into Lisa and I are into finding new ways that bookstores can be more successful, finding the time and energy to try new things.
So, medication helps, but I've always looked to the future. I also love retail. I love all aspects of retail. I love crappy retail. I love beautiful retail, which helps me stay ahead of trends and seeing how people are shopping, how people are. And I think Lisa and I've talked about this endlessly whenever we've had a moment alone. Just the whole aspect and the psychology of retail. So paying attention to that as an owner, you bring that filter in, and you're like, okay, well, I don't want to bring those gift items in because they're at TJ Maxx, and I want to do this because it's affordable, but it looks like this from Nordstrom's or whatever. And then paying attention to what is working for your readers, for your shoppers. What are the things that trigger them? And being welcoming is also the number one thing, especially as a bookstore. It is an obligation and our duty and our calling is to be, the word may be overused at this point, but to be that safe space for our community, that space where people can share ideas, whether they differ, whether they're in common, that place where that young kid is not marginalized when he comes in and is actually treated with respect and engaged with as a full person. So all of that helps me forecast. Once you're welcoming, you can then invest in different gift items. You can invest in a staff that will help you with the merchandising. You can look at your programs and decide what really works, what's relevant now, and acknowledging the fact that the pandemic collectively changed our brains. So while a few things may work now, surviving a global pandemic has rewired all of us. And what was may not work. And always having to face that, like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? And I'm guilty of it myself. Like, well, this is how I've always do it, but it's not working. So how do we make it work? Or if it doesn't work, how do we step away from it and say, like, that's no longer part of the business model, or that's no longer part of our culture, or I can't work that way anymore, whatever the thing is.
And are there specifics that you could cite that you felt you had to pay attention to now, that post-pandemic, or now that you're an owner? I mean, how does nuts and bolts kind of play out?
You do watch the numbers. I mean, I've never been more obsessed with a P&L. With at NCIBA and Kaliba, I had the wonderful, maniacally efficient Ann Seaton to work with. So she did the reports and she gave me the numbers, and it was a very nice, lofty place to sit in. Um, Now Ann and I have to pay attention every day. We have to budget for things. And, one of the shifts was how we bought gifts. The bookshop wasn't known for a lot of gifts. And I come from if anybody's been to Book Passage, you know that we're heavy on high end gifts. I've done panels for ABA on high end gifts. That doesn't leave my personhood. So being able to develop a space where we went from sufficient nice gifts to now, I would say, extraordinary goods is a big point of pleasure. Plus, we make more money on that. Like, we make the money that affords us to sell the books that we love.
Talk a little bit about how you're connecting those high-end gifts with your book and with story and with the story of King's English, because I know it's all one connected thing for you.
Well, first of all, you have to make some mistakes and be prepared to make them. So not everybody wants wash and wear cashmere, is what I've learned. um, but you have to have a plan for those things too. Like, is that something we donate? Do we mark it down? How do we even break even on it? But it was, Ann and I are very collaborative, and Keith, my husband, is also very collaborative. He comes from very many experiences in life, but also from experience in Macy's and having his own import business. So the three of us merging Ann's longevity and experience and insight to the Utah culture, which almost 4 years in, I have not yet got a read on, and Keith's experience, and then my desires for high-end goods. We figured it out in a way. Like, we now have beautiful jewelry, and we have jewelry that is targeted for the older demographic, the long-term demographic, and with the new demographic coming in, we have jewelry that targets them, and we have body care and stuff like that bridges the gap between the two. And one of the things we learned is that, especially during the holidays, more men will buy the body care products than women because they're buying them for their wives, and they trust us to put quality goods in front of them.
You
And
do you worry at all about diluting the image as a bookstore with all that side stuff?
No, it is what we have to do as a business, and it's the same thing with as we develop our programming. There are things that don't work anymore, and judging a bookstore because they carry socks, it can't be one of those things that I take on. If we carry socks, though, we specifically won't carry socks that the other bookstores in the area carry. We do find, like, the last batch of socks we brought in were from Scotland, but now with the tariff thing, we won't be replenishing them for a while. We don't want to be ordinary in what we're doing, but we want to be doing things that match the name of the King's English, which the brand is very literary. It's very committed to hardcovers to programming with and without authors. And the name in itself establishes a bar of elegance. So no, I think we've enhanced it with what we're doing. We may have had some shortfalls and some mistakes, but we've learned from them quickly. And I do believe we're enhancing the brand.
When you're doing book related merchandise, I mean, your things all have stories, right? I mean, the
We do
like
work with
thinking about
story.
the Scottish socks, for instance, there's a story there.
Right. So that's a female owned business. She works with her two sons. It started out as a small family business. It's much larger now. The jewelry, we can tell you who the makers are, and there's a little sign telling you who they are. We brought in some other Scottish things. We talked to the artist when we brought in some ceramic ware. So sharing the story, because we are a bookshop, sharing the story and not just having, and I don't want to disparage any of the brands, but just having those ordinary brands you see everywhere, there's no story to that. There's not the elegance to that. I don't think there's the impact. We want sustainable, we want small business, we want local if we can find it, we want US made if we can find it. But sometimes there's extraordinary gifts with extraordinary stories that relate to what we do.
Kevin, I'm sorry, what is this? Deny all AI. I'm going to deny AI. Kevin, do you talk that up? I mean, what you just spoke to was a great mission and clear differentiation of your store, setting the bar high, etc. Do you get your staff to talk up a lot of those personal stories of the products you sell, including the books?
We are getting better and better at that. Sharing the stories, even in staff meetings, or sharing stories when we're hand selling. Restock replenishing the cards as a bookseller. Like, it's all part of what we do as a bookseller. It is not one person's job to hand sell fiction. It's not one person's job to restock the cards. It has to be collaborative, and we have to know some degree of why it's here, why we chose it, because there are many things that we don't choose. And Vicky, I saw your question, and even with our branded stuff, we want to be extraordinary. We don't want things that are going to fall apart. Um, and we still have to be affordable. The economy here is interesting because it's a good economy, but the spending habits have a cultural influence that I don't know how to break.
Leads to many more questions. Somebody asked, "What's the percent?" An interesting one. What's the percentage of sideline revenue versus books?
We're still under 20%, despite what we're doing.
And do you look at that and hope that you can make it more than 20, or do you try and boost the book sales so that you're less than 20?
Yeah, I think like 22, 25 might be max because at our core, we're a bookshop. So we can't look like a gift shop and we don't want to, but we can look like a house filled with books that has a little vignette of beautiful items here and a rack of beautiful items there, or a shelf of exquisite pottery or whatever. And it also, I believe that merchandising the gifts breaks the static of wallpaper. Trying to find ways to always show books differently. So it's not just line after line after line, and having that interruption where people take a breath and go, oh, yeah, or stop and say, well, I wasn't looking for a mystery, but this candle pulled me over to the mysteries. And oh, I haven't read Martin Cruz Smith in a while. There's a new one. I should get it. Like, I believe all that psychology works and is helping build our bottom line.
You mentioned, Cal, that our brains have been rewired after the pandemic and that you're following trends. Can you speak a little more about what you're seeing? I mean, how have our brains been rewired, and what are the trends that you're particularly aware of?
I think an easy example is how hot genre is right now. 4 years ago, we added two awkward shelves of romance because there was no romance. Well, now we have a whole room that is romance and romantasy and graphic novels and speculative and science fiction and mystery and horror because that's what's on trend. I'm living for the day when literary fiction becomes the trend again. But that's the trend. And in having these and inviting people in and not, welcoming them to romance, welcoming them to horror. Horror still scares me when someone asks a question, like 31 years in, and they want to know what's the really scary books. I don't know. I can't intake that. But I
Yeah.
have booksellers who will step in and cover for me when they see the look of horror on my face. uh, but those kind of trends, like like a trickle of romance, and now look where we are with genre. A lot of our successful programming is either kids or romance events, and 4 years ago we didn't have a romance section. So
Hmm.
if we hadn't worked on doing that, look what we'd be missing at this point.
Cal, so how did you work on doing that? How much of this is just watching sales? What data do you look at? What tools do you do to understand your audience and what new things you can do to bring new people in?
It was harder with our old POS system. Our new POS system makes it really easy. As a visual learner, give me a graphic and I'm solid. But we're watching section turns all the time. Again, moving things around when it seems appropriate. And also, romance came from an education session that was it was actually the Southern California trade show that Source Books put on. And I learned that romance readers have like a secret web where if a store chastises them or judges them or is rude to them, there's a list of stores that are blacklisted. And I did not want that for the treasure that is the King's English. I did not want that. I did not want us to be on any blacklist. I really wanted to show everyone that they're welcome regardless of what they're reading and that we have a space for them.
You told me that's fascinating. I'm not going to ask you to put the link to the blacklist in the chat.
I wish I could find it.
You can't find it because you're not on it. So you told me that at one point, and I'm sure you shared it with Lisa, that you tried to make a change in the store 3 times a week so that if somebody comes back more than once in a week, they see something fresh.
I Every key thing should move around. And so it is a soft, passive thing that we're showing the person that's in for the first time or comes in every 6 months or every 3 months. And that works. But when you have the loyal reader, the person that sees you 2 times a week, 3 times a week, the blessed ones that see us 5 times a week, I feel it's an obligation to show them something new every time they come in. Again, it's that wallpaper mentality. If everything's stagnant, you're not seeing new things. And so I'm teaching the team that we can just even take this vignette that's over in history and 3 days later move it into mystery and then move that one into cooking. And, even if it's a rotation like that. So someone who didn't see it before might see it the next day. And we also find dead spaces that way. When nothing works in that space, we know that, it's dead space.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, you mentioned your partnership with Anne and working together. Tell us a little bit about how the two of you divide and conquer
So
and facilitate
it,
things.
Also, I'm sorry to interrupt, but also explain who Anne is. We
so
need to do
Anne
that. Yeah.
Hallman is an extraordinary bookseller who's been at the King's English for over 25 years. She's a very long time friend. We really became friends in 2012 when I did the walkthrough for ABA, when I did the store tours. And Anne got to show me the back room at the King's English, which at that time I felt like a rock star going backstage, or like I'd just seen a Broadway play and got to go backstage. Now, I don't know that I have that same affection for the back room. But Anne and I really developed a separate friendship from the bookshop and from Betsy. So when Betsy called and then she told Anne, once I said I was interested, Anne version is that she was delighted she couldn't think of a better person to work with. And though it started out as an arranged marriage, we have found our footing. And Anne's strengths are incredible. Her knowledge of the community, her knowledge of the books we sell. We have, and I say this having been in a lot of bookstores and helped a lot of bookstores and managed a lot of individual bookstores. We have the best nature and poetry section I have ever seen. And those are two highbrow sections that always intimidated me in the Bay Area. But I will fight on how good our poetry and how good our nature is. Never mind fiction and everything else we do. Like Anne has an extraordinary eye for who our readers are. And as we both age, those are concerns. How do we build that again? But she, again, we do a lot of things collaboratively. She and my husband are now taking a little bit more of the bookshop control as I move a little bit more into the nonprofit, Brain Food Books, because we're really at a place where we see the need more and more for children having access to literature. And so I come into this spiritually. I believe being a bookseller is a calling, like that I can make a living is awesome. But part of that calling is to show everyone that books are welcoming. Books can change your life. Books can change, 2 hours of your day. Books can offer you escape, information, empathy, curiosity. So the three of us really agree that more time needs to be spent putting books into the hands of our under-recognized neighbors along the Wasatch Front.
Tell
It's
us
not
more about.
dissimilar to what DJ Johnson is doing with Baldwin in New Orleans, right? Who I think well.
I know him well, and I know I say this to his face. He's the Elvis of book selling. And I can only aspire to do all or to have the impact that DJ is having in New Orleans. It is fantastic. And when you think he hasn't done enough, he creates another nonprofit, or he has another aspect to uplift his community. And I mean, isn't that why we're booksellers?
So, tell us about Brain Food Books. You started down that road, but you're a hybrid model, right? And
We're a hybrid
you're
model.
doing pretty amazing things yourself. So we want to hear about those things.
So I think this confirmed my book selling spirituality. So moved back. And one of the caveats was that Ansean and I at Kaliba then kept talking about how can we do something like this? How can we put books into the hands of kids who don't have access, or other community members that don't have regular access? How can we do this? But digging into the bylaws and looking at the logistics, we would have to create a nonprofit that had to work with all 365 members, or was available for all 365 members to work with. We already had the trade organization. That was enough. So coming back to Utah, I was like, hey, economy of scale, I think I can do this. So we relocated end of June. We'd been commuting back and forth on the weekends. Christmas Eve, 2021, a reader comes up to the counter with a stack of books. We do the customer rewards. She gives me a phone number. And she says, if that has a discount on it, then I need to give you a different phone number. And so the first one had her name, Barbara Bean. The second one comes up as Brain Food Books, and it also has the discount. I said, so what is Brain Food Books? And she said, it's my 501c3. I'm retired from being a pediatrician, but I had 3 clinics on the West Side that we kept books in, so that when the kids got their wellness checkup, instead of a lollipop or a balloon or whatever, they got to go to a bookshelf and pick the book of their choice. And she said, what are your, honest to God, her next question was, well, what are your plans besides the King's English? And I said, exactly that. That is my plan, but it's my 3 to 5 year plan. And somehow we were holding up the line. So I excused myself from the register. We went out front to paint the scene, our cute cottage, our charming cottage, light snowfall, Dr. Barbara Bean and I in front of the bench, talking about how important it is and how books change lives, crying, crying, because we both believe in the work so much. And 2 weeks later, she called and she said, I've talked to the attorneys. I was in the middle of shutting Brain Food Books down. I've asked them to hold off. Would you like to take it on? And suddenly we had a 501c3 that I was going to do in 3 years. So we hit the ground running. To date, between donated books and all the different ways we bring books in, we are about 500 books short of saying that we've given out 50,000 books in the 3 years that we've had Brain Food Books. We have brought author programming to kids who, never even owned a book before, that they then got a signed copy of. We have that model of books at wellness clinics. We have them along the Wasatch Front. We have gifting shelves at alternative high schools. We have them in POC focused. I don't know what they call them, but it's a room dedicated for the POC students. We are in shelters, and we are now in 8 of 20 of this family of drug rehab centers. And as of yesterday, we have enough books to build libraries on the Go Shoot reservation in their wellness houses. And the way they house them is there's a men's house and a female's house, or a men's house and a women's house. Each house will now have a nice collection of native focused books that we will deliver, I hope, within the next few days.
Oh my gosh. And,
And
paint us a picture of something that is happening in King's English today because of brain food books that is the embodiment of your hope of, other than what you just said, which is amazing. But inside King's English, through events, through connection, through relationships, that sort of thing. I know you're seeing it.
Yeah. Our reader base is much more diverse. Our reader base reflects the Utah that I see. A point of pride, I'm back on the west side and where I live, so I'm with my people. But we're seeing them. And part of this is when we bring the kids in to pick a book of their choice or some of our programming, we had Kinsell Drake, the poet. And also, again, the universe. It happened to be my birthday. We had Kinsell Drake. We were ready for a poetry event is 20 to 35 if it's a really well attended one. We had 85 people in the King's English Bookshop. We had them hanging from the rafters, and there were two white people, one woman of Asian descent, and a black gentleman. The rest was Native American. And so that, to me, is the biggest acknowledgement of our shift. Our romance events, like 500 people. Like, I don't know, other than back in the day, like a Margaret Atwood or a Stephen King that gets that kind of attendance now.
That's crazy.
how do you acknowledge or you have a connection the way, say, Kepler's Praveen Madan's store has a nonprofit and a profit, and in his case, it's mission driven, but a completely different mission about trying to generate enough revenue to pay people much better than they normally get paid in bookstores. Excuse me. One of the things that's fascinating about that is the nonprofit is more profitable in a sense because they're not selling books. They're promoting events and doing classes and stuff. And I think the same thing is true with Baldwin and New Orleans. How do you see the relationship so that, in other words, is your model an inspiring model to all the other people on now because they also could underline their mission with a nonprofit adjacent?
I'm going to say this, and it is not ego driven in any way because I was not the first one to do it. Hopefully I won't be the last one. This is the future of bookselling. This symbiotic relationship is how not only do we commit to the missions we do, and the King's English mission is really matching books to readers. Brain Food is matching books to readers. Those kids, everything we do, unless it's a specific author event or a specific title that targets the whole school, it is about access and choice. So bottom line, we're doing the same work on both sides. We're just doing it differently. On the King's English side, I want you to see books as extraordinary, hence the extraordinary merchandise. And on the Brain Food side, I want everyone to see that books are accessible and that they are for everyone and that there's a space for them. By working together, we have a shared services agreement. It offsets some of the costs of the bookshop. The bookshop also gives us a discount that affords us to give out that many more books. Plus, the weight and the might of the King's English and its legacy allows us to take in quality donated books that we can then redistribute. So it is a mesh, and it does allow us to pay a better wage. It allowed us this year, we were able to get more people on healthcare. Like these are things that, again, filling of the people are important. And by working together, we can do that. We also are attracting talent that I don't know that just as a bookshop we could attract, and really as a renewed nonprofit we couldn't afford to bring in. So having them work together, Whitney Berger, she's the most overqualified marketing and communications person someone could ask for. It does help that she's from Utah, that she's Ann's daughter, but being able to attract someone with her resume and even help her navigate a life here is extraordinary for us. Amanda, that works with her, also does a lot of stuff for Brain Food, where she's creating book fairs that are fundraisers. So like, it's incredible how sometimes you can't separate the two, but when you look at the finances, both are stronger together, and the efficiencies. And I will guarantee you, efficiencies is where the money is. When we look at what we do and we like, why does touching an internet order 41 times, why do we accept that? How can we touch it 3 times and be done with it? Like that amount of payroll that just suddenly evaporates can be used for something else. It can be used for those wages. It can be used for new bookshelves. It can put new plants out front. Like it is efficiencies, and having both organizations work together is at, at worst, it's an efficiency that we need.
Can you explain, give an example of an efficiency that you discovered, deep into your ownership, or
Um, Changing the POS system.
which one did you have and which one do you have now?
I'm not going to say what we were on because I'm only living in positivity, and it just didn't work. It didn't have. It, it's no secret. A lot of them are clunky. I also have. This is a sidebar. Um, Growing up in Utah, I have issues about culthoods, and every time someone talked to me about Book Manager, I was like, it sounds like a cult. I've joined the cult. The efficiencies and the cohesiveness and the way we can really look at our data, whether it's our customer lists and we haven't become dynamic at it yet because we only changed last year. But as we settle into it and we find all the efficiencies and all the positive disruptions, and again, marrying contact lists with the two organizations are going to be easier now. We can sell tickets through Book Manager, so we can do less with Eventbrite. Like, I mean, just this, and then the platform we use on the nonprofit is GiveButter, and that also allows us to sell tickets and build a database. So these things, though they have a fee to them, are saving us a ton of money.
Yeah. You're, so it is, and I can't believe I don't know this, but is Book Manager um, cloud-based
Uh,
or
it's still DOS based, I think.
still DOS-based? Okay, it's not cloud-based.
Funny
But
story. I waited for the training because I wanted to be like the person who struggled most with it. I wanted them to learn it with me, like to build their confidence and show them that like we all have to learn this. The problem was no one struggled. So I have yet to be trained on Book Manager. So while I'm proselytizing for it, I know the back end part, but I cannot take your cash at this moment.
What's a practical efficiency, one more efficiency just in the store in terms of display and turnover and turns?
So allowing everyone to touch things. A lot of bookshops and a lot of bookshops, even when I was the manager, and I am guilty of this, the controls. Like I wanted to be, and I see Summer on here, and we've worked together enough that I know she could vouch for me that I wanted to be in control of cooking. Whatever store I'm at, I wanted to be in control of cooking. So I was very territorial, disrupting the territorialness so that other ideas can come through and taking out judgment. You know what I mean? Like people will do things. And again, I have a witness on here in Summer. You don't tell them it's awful. You find the positive in it and you encourage the positive, and you let go of that control yourself. It creates a much freer environment where everybody will touch everything, and people now naturally know sections better than they would because there's not the attack dog.
you mentioned this positivity. I know Dave and I, when we went to Franklin, we made a list of 11 things that we would never do as leaders. And then within the first 3 weeks, we did all of them. And because it was like some kind of biological instinct that kind of took over. What are the things that you have found yourself doing and moved away from and replaced with a different behavior? You mentioned one of them, like it's your tendency to be control and to let it go and positive. Are there others that you've been like, you know?
Let me think for a minute because the positive one is a daily thing.
Yeah.
But
It's a
it changes how people respond to you as well. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
if I'm not looking at the negative, I'm also finding I don't take it in the way that I used to take it in. And so really to be in the space, there's an undercurrent of positivity that you kind of can't step out of. Um,
It sounds like abundance too, that you're
but
coming from
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
there's an abundance mentality in the way that you speak about things that doesn't feel like you're on a constant clench
yeah.
uh,
I don't
around
want
finance.
I don't want a hierarchy. I mean, if there's a hierarchy, it's a hierarchy of responsibility. It's not a hierarchy of task. It's not a hierarchy of job description. I will take out the trash. I will, do those things. Maybe at this moment, I'm not the best person to ask, but it's in my wheelhouse. And I did spend the first year being that person, like showing them that I will take out the trash, that I will vacuum, I will shelve, I will do those things, I will restock cards. But I do like the community thing. But every now and again, you're like, wait a minute, I'm the goddamn owner, and this is the way it is. And I thought I would never be that person, but it's because I
It,
see
it,
that the cost of whatever that thing is, and I just have to stop it.
it's hard. How are you building alignment within your staff for the things that you all care about together? The caring about this idea of the elevated experience, caring about the integrated merchandising, caring about changing things every day. How do you build that alignment? Because in bookshops, it's really hard because you're not all in the same place at the same time, and
And
communication is a challenge.
yeah, in a legacy store, and I will tell you this: I've opened shops fresh, and I have replaced many managers who are not working out. When you open a shop, that DNA never goes away. So whatever the reiteration is, and again, I'm talking energy, I'm talking habits, I'm talking all those things. It always falls back to that. And I have nothing negative about the bookshop because it is the reason I'm a bookseller. But pre-pandemic, it was a different environment. And we still want to fall back into that if we're not vigilant. And it's even the newer booksellers, the energy in a space just pulls back to that. So it is a matter of being vigilant. Um, it is a matter of constantly talking about it and really getting them to see the point of it. And I now know this. I've tried every method of communication. I've tried bullet points. I've tried essay. I tried storytelling. Doesn't mean their receptors will take any of those methods. So being consistent in my behavior and my expectations is is the challenge.
Yeah.
And now there's three of us really guiding the store, so the three of us have to be supportive, cohesive, and on the same page at the same time.
Yeah.
In case
That
people are thinking, Cal, that yours is a big store and doesn't apply to them, how many square feet? How many square feet do you have? How many books? How many employees?
With the back rooms, we're at about 2,000 square feet, but at 1,800s retail, and it's not. I'm going to use my word again. It's not efficient because it is 8 broken up rooms. So I envy the luxury of open space. And most of the bookshelves, and I think this is what part of the charm and the magic of space is. Betsy Burton had friends who remodeled their basement and donated their bookshelves to the bookstore. So Lisa knows my fantasy is a Franklin fixture store. We are the opposite of that. We don't have shelves that are adjustable. We do have to, while we pay attention to linear square feet, we still have to pay attention to that. This is the space available. Like nothing's going to change the space until the day that there's a lottery and I can bring Franklin in. So um, that's our space. We have about 23 people on our payroll, but it's about the equivalent of 13. And a lot of people have been there. A few people have been there quite a while. Anne and Vivian are the longest termed employees straight through. We, our books, I don't know. I honestly don't know how many books we have. The space is so full. We stack books every which way on the shelves now. We're not just spine, spine, spine. We will stack them if it's the same author. If it's a series, we'll do everything we can to fit them in. So if we could contain 100,000 books, we probably have 152,000 books.
That would be
So
a lot of books.
Yeah, it's a
So
lot.
we actually should have asked you. I'm sorry, we didn't do this to show us some of the shelves. Yes, we've been doing over in our class on Eileen's school, great school. Um, but so it sounds like you're relying on your legacy and all your tactics, and you're not really paying a lot of attention to store display. Am I right?
No, store display is important. And also because of the legacy store, you also have to honor things. So like it took a while before we could move mystery. But truth of the matter is mystery isn't happening the way it happened when it had a whole room to itself. Mystery is much better on well-lit shelves that are accessible to more people. Um, but convincing our diehard mystery readers that we're not diminishing mystery, we're only enhancing mystery by moving it is part of the struggles with the legacy. And, turns out that room is not as profitable as we thought it was. Like, so how do we fix that room? And so we're working on that because we just relied on the fact that, well, we identify as having a really good mystery section. We still have a really good mystery section. It's now turning better than it turned when it had a whole room. And I believe our selection of titles is that much better because they're moving through better.
Well, and I have
You,
heard you talk about your approach to display. I think I think that's something you're thinking about a lot is how you put things together when you put them, especially when you're mixing your high-end merchandising, making it look special and and your husband has a background in that. I think he's been
Yeah, he's amazing.
yeah, and informing that as well. So that's a big piece.
what essentials do you pay the most attention to, both between finance and display and turns? In other words, do you, like most small businesses that are successful, do you have a certain number of numbers about your monthly nut and stuff like that in your head? And then do you also pay a lot of attention to how many turns you can do in a year?
We are building new data because we don't trust the old data. So we are watching each section. We keep a close eye on hardcover fiction. It's still our bread and butter. I want to live in that space. I want that to always be the legacy that goes through from whoever's shepherding the bookstore next. But we don't really have a lot of numbers to show against horror. We don't have a lot of numbers to show against romantasy. So what we're doing is we're paying attention to the numbers as they're happening now. We're looking at the old data to see what is moving and what isn't, but we're really building really new numbers to look at. So we let go of the pre-pandemic thing that we want to rely on because it is unreliable, and we build what is who is our reader now? What is our community like now?
Is that the essential difference, by the way, when you measure between pre and post-pandemic? Well, big change in audience, or are there
Yeah,
other?
yeah. The pandemic took people away, whether they moved or moved on. It took people away. New ownership also took people away. New ownership is scary, um, regardless of what their background is.
Mhm.
New ownership brings a lot of terror because someone's going to move my cheese, someone's going to move my books. And we really were thoughtful before we started moving. And again, I have a witness in Summer, as a person who likes to move things and thrives in change, organized change, letting things sit when I knew that they would work better in other places was really hard for me to do, but I had to build the trust of the legacy shopper, of the legacy reader.
And did
Summer,
you and your
oh, go ahead, Sue.
I was just going to ask if you and your employees, the booksellers, did an enormous amount of talking for a couple of years about the changes and why you're doing it, kind of like doing a behind the scenes almost.
You had a question for Summer.
Uh, yeah, Summer, I hear you giggling. It just feels like you have something to say, and I would love to hear your voice. So, uh, it sounds like you have a big history with the shop.
Well, Summer's at Books Inc. in Laurel Village, so that was my first Books Inc. store. Um, but we have stayed friends. Same
Here
with
comes
I
summer.
Oh,
Here
There
comes
she is.
Summer.
sorry, I'm on. Can you hear me? I don't even know. I'm on my phone. So,
Yes.
And can.
um, no, everything that Calvin is saying is spot on. So not only is he a treasure in a store environment, whatever store he walks into, but also is so self-aware. I love that he knows that about himself. And yeah, it's um, he has a magic of walking into a space and being able to see what sort of is or isn't working and putting things back in or into a space where it will work and flow. And I miss him. And I'm so just proud at what is. I hadn't actually realized that King's English was as small as it is. I do get a sense that it is just larger than life, I guess. And I'm so interested in watching how Brain Food Books um, it works together with the store. At Books Inc., we also have a nonprofit arm, and it doesn't seem to be quite as cohesive yet. So I'm really interested in seeing how those join together and how we communicate that to our longtime booksellers so that they understand the synergy as well.
So, full disclosure, I am the president of the Reading Bridge Books Inc.'s nonprofit. I agreed to do it to train Hannah, who's now in my old job at Kaliba, but I'm sticking around, especially for those kind of things, Summer, because even with the smaller staff, it takes a while. And I dare say that with no bad intentions, some of my booksellers still don't fully understand what Brain Food does or how we work together. And it is just, again, how people's receptors work. There's no badness about it. And having hundreds of employees, it's a heavy lift.
Yeah. And
I
and
suggest,
probably heavier.
Lisa, 1 second. I just wanted to throw something in, then you can go. Um, Number one, I suggest that, and I'll put it in the recording when we send it out, that you look at a couple of past episodes. DJ Johnson and Baldwin talking about how he integrated classes and nonprofits in the foundation. And then there's another one or two that are really useful, particularly from Praveen Madan about Kepler's and how the nonprofit side of theirs actually is more of a business integration in an interesting way, not necessarily just a mission, driver. But anyway, I'll include links, Lisa, in both to both episodes because they're all on our site. Go
And I
ahead,
just
Lisa.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Cal.
I want to answer Vicky's question she put in the chat. We're very committed to small press, as you know. With the hybrid model, it has not been fully exploited. It is easier to work with a small press. There are efficiencies of ways you can now keep overstock viable instead of paying storage for them or, God forbid, pulping them. If you find the right hybrid model that maybe can distribute those for you. There's all kinds of things, and it's case by case, nonprofit, small press. But there's an opportunity for small presses to really create stronger, healthier relationships with these hybrid models. You move quicker, the quality of books that you are producing. And for those of us in states with book bans, the majority of small press books are not on the book ban list. So I can freely give out LQ books, I can freely give out Lee and Low books, and they're the representation for the community that I'm of service to. So it's untapped potential.
I think so too. Yeah.
Do you have anything to say to that, Vicky? You've got an equally Renaissance woman
Yeah,
background.
no, I've worked with Calvin over at Kaliba, before it was Kaliba. And yes, I think I will be calling you so that we can run that innovative model as far as it could run, because it's really been on my mind, this sort of gap between the old days where, booksellers and publishers work so closely together, it felt like. We're more kin, and now it feels like we're on separate tracks. And I think COVID just kind of stepped in the middle of that, maybe. But I think there's some ways we can work together that will be very innovative. And I think you're the man for me, Calvin.
Oh, look, pick my brain and then do what you can with it, because I honestly believe the strength in both of these. And I'll be truthful. I said that the trying to work for the paycheck, um, being consistent at McSweeney's. Truthfully, the day that broke me was the day that they handed me a spreadsheet and told me I had to pull books.
Yeah.
Nowhere in the interview process had we talked about that. I did not know what pulping books was until they handed me the spreadsheet and I asked, "What do you mean pulp books?" I went home, drank heavily, looked at the list, and cried
Yeah.
because I'm a bookseller. I will throw a book that has outlived its life away because nobody needs that smelly book in their house, but it is not about anything other than that book smells. But books that have never been touched by an individual or never had the chance to open doors for someone, destroying them hurts my heart in the worst possible way.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be done anymore with print on demand as much. And I'm certain that I will be at the gates of hell for all the books that from my first publishing company when that was the only option. So it is a big issue.
They're waiting for you, Vicky, with their knives drawn
Yeah, I'm
in
like,
heaven.
oh, how did I get here? Oh, I know. It's all those damn trees.
Just so everybody knows, Vicky's got a new, not fairly new, it's not that new, publishing company that's breaking all sorts of innovative techniques. It's called Sibylline Press, and it's wonderful. And I know a number of the authors. It's dedicated to women over the age of 50 and roughly, and it's a fabulous publishing company, new one. Um, so what else? We have a few minutes left. Lisa, do you have any more questions? Cal?
Well, I'd like to hear from anybody that has a question that they need to ask, and we've covered a lot of things. Um, Cal, is there anything that we have not touched on that the question that's been in my mind is like we're in an elevator and I'm asking you what you do, um, and I don't know anything about what you do. What do you tell us?
I'm
What
going to tell you,
what is
first, I'm a bookseller. We in fact have changed my name, also in honor of my Cherokee heritage. I am now the Chief Bookseller at the King's English, because that's what I do. Everything I do is to put books in people's hands, and there's not a book handler title that makes sense, but I'm a bookseller, and I want to put a book in your hand, whether you give me $10 for it or I'm giving it to you for free. Like my job is to put a book in your hand that will change your life, at least for a couple hours. How I get there, that's the complicated mission. And I'll
creating
tell
this?
you this, yeah, even Karen Torres, when she was still at Hatchet and I was at the regionals, she would always comment on how I've never stopped being a bookseller. I always held a bookseller perspective. And I always thought like, oh, she's just like saying that. We're still friends. And she was the least surprised that I was going back to full-time bookselling of anybody I told when I told them I was leaving Kaliba.
Yeah, because
And,
you love changing
probably
lives.
we should probably wrap up as we're approaching the end, but I just wanted to thank you, Cal. It's been really extraordinary. And I don't think we've talked to anybody that it was as clear as about their mission and then could translate it into examples and models of how you executed than you. I think what you're doing is wonderful. Makes me want to come to Utah and visit your store.
Please come to
Lisa?
the store.
I can't wait to do that myself, and
Yeah.
and I'm so glad. I think we've I'm seeing Summer saying Calvin is a national treasure. I think uh, two thumbs up. We've got some, yes. Hear ye, national treasure, and thank you for all that you have dedicated in the past 31 years to the culture that we call the independent bookstore. And to all of us, you've given to so many people off of this call. So many people say, I owe this to what Calvin has done. You've been so generous with other booksellers and with publishers and with the whole industry, with your life. Um, and it has made a difference, and you ripple all over the place in the best ways. So thank you for giving us this time and being so well loved. Great session. Everybody's applauding. and, uh, and yes, you can share this with coworkers because Steve nicely puts this on. It's a recorded Zoom call, so it'll be a recording and you'll have access to this. And please share it because we have a lot to learn from each other. And Calvin, your spirit is one that we want to see replicated all over the country. And the more we listen and think like this, the better we're going to do. So thank you so much.
I want a t-shirt that says King's Bookstore and then it says keep on rippling. So thank you all. Yeah, no, the recording and the transcript of the recordings, if you don't have time to watch it, poor you, will come out, will be up by the weekend for sure. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
Bye-bye.